Hello to everyone just joining this session. I'm just going to keep letting people in for a moment and just give it a few minutes before we've got everyone before we get started. Thank you everyone for joining this session. Just going to keep letting people in. I'm really interested to see who we've got kind of watching today. So if you just do me a favour, just drop in the chat what country you're watching from today, just to see kind of who we've got watching and what kind of spread around the world we've got. But it's really exciting that we're at the Global Youth Summit. Hopefully got a really good reach. Amazing. We've got Florida, we've got Indonesia, UK. Amazing. Mexico, fantastic. Great to have you. From Canada, Singapore. Wow, we've got people from loads of places. That's really exciting. All here to talk about young governance, which is I think it's a really exciting thing. I'll just give it a little bit longer. We've still got quite a lot of people coming in. I think we've given it a couple of minutes, so I think we'll get started, and as people come in, we can keep admitting them. So thank you everyone for attending our session today, run by the Chastity Youth Board, all about models of youth engagement in conservation governance and about how we can make young voices heard. I'm really excited to get started. I'll introduce who's going to be speaking and who from the Youth Board are here today. But just before I get started, just want to put a little note about behaviour. I don't expect any bad behaviour from anyone, but just to let you know that we have a zero tolerance policy, and if there's any inappropriate behaviour in the chat throughout the session, we will remove you. We don't want to have to do that, and I don't expect that we'll have to, but I just want to get that over and done with before we start our session. So yeah, that is that's our session. Thank you all for joining today, and we'll get started. So the people you're going to be seeing today, my name is Connor. I'm kind of the external reach co-lead as part of the zoo, as part of the Zoo Youth Board rather, and we'll kind of get onto what that means in a little while. We've also got Felix and Izzy, who are vice chairs of the Youth Board, and Felix will be doing a presentation all about who the Youth Board are later today. And Izzy, you'll see in a bit of a panel discussion a little bit later on. You'll also see Jess today, and she'll be doing a speech later in the session on Thursday. And you might also see Andy from the Youth Board today as well, a little bit later on. And can I just ask that everyone keeps their microphones on mute for the entirety of the session, please, today, just so whenever anyone's talking, we're able to hear them clearly without any interruptions. That's absolutely perfect. Thank you very much. And so the sessions today are all about how we can make young voices heard in conservation governance. And when we're talking about conservation governance, we're specifically referring to within conservation organisations and groups that are working to conserve the natural world. So we're not quite talking about the governance of countries or communities. There'll be a little bit more of that later in the second session on Thursday, but we are mainly talking within conservation organisations such as a zoo or a conservation project out there in the wild. And so the aim of the sessions that we're running this week will be to help young people and those organisations that are implementing young people to really recognise the power that young governance can have and how that can impact an organisation. and why other organisations should be doing it. Now, we know that there's loads of organisations out there that are already listening to young voices and making young voices heard and implementing that in their organisations. So we're going to highlight some of the work those organisations are doing and how exactly they managed to set those up. Because one of the aims of these sessions is to make it easier for other organisations to invite young people into their organisation and help them make their decisions. So one of the outcomes of this that I'm going to ask for your help with right at the end of the session is creating a collaborative toolkit of experience. So we're going to collect advice and tips from lots of people out there who are already listening to the views of young people when making decisions in their organisations. And hopefully we'll have that resource there. So if any other organisations want to set up a youth board or something similar, they'll be able to have that to look at and help them realise how to do that. So the session today is going to look a little bit like this. So I'm going to wrap up my introduction fairly quickly now, and then Felix is going to do a little presentation all about the Chester Zoo Youth Board, who we are, how we came about, and kind of what we've done so far, and all about how we set up the youth board at Chester Zoo. We're then going to have a presentation from Zoos Victoria in Australia about their Millennial Advisory Board. Unfortunately, that is going to be a video recording because of the time differences, just meant that someone from Australia couldn't be available for this session. And then a little bit later, we're going to have a presentation from Heidi Bailey from Reserva, the Youth Land Trust, who are currently working to conserve a patch of rainforest in Ecuador and have a youth council that is made up of young people from around the world. So we're going to talk a little bit about how they and then after that we're going to open have a little chat with all of our presenters. So we're going to chat with Felix, with Heidi, and we'll also invite Izzy from the Chester Zoo Youth Board to the panel as well. We'll be asking some questions from you guys and some questions that I've prepared as well. So if at any point during these presentations you have any questions, please pop them in the chat and I'll ask those to our presenters after all of the presentations have happened. And then I'm going to be popping all of you into breakout rooms and asking and opening up that discussion about youth governance and how organisations value young people and how they can kind of take their views on board. We'll have a bit of time to chat that over and then we'll wrap up in about 2 hours time. And the session on Thursday we're running as well, it's exactly the same time and it's going to look really similar, but we're going to have 3 different speakers. So we're going to have speakers from Teach the Future in the UK, who are a student-led network trying to get the climate crisis on the UK curriculum. And we're going to have a speaker from Philippine Reef and Rainforest Conservation Foundation about their work they're doing with young people out in communities in the Philippines. And we're also going to have a speaker from Madagascar at Vakachi about their Youth for Lemurs programme. But now that I've kind of introduced everything, I'm going to pass over to Felix, who's going to do our presentation on the Chester Zoo Youth Board and talk to you all about how we managed to set that up.
Great, thanks, Connor. Great, 1 second. Right, are we there? Cool. Okay, right. So hi everyone. So as Connor gave a quick introduction, my name is Felix. I'm one of the vice chairs of Chester Zoo Youth Board. And so I'm just going to give you a quick introduction about who we are as an organisation and the Youth Board and how we started really. So Chester Zoo, we are a registered charity in the UK found in the northwest of England in Chester. We own a site of 55 hectares, which has over 2,000 animal and plant species. And on a normal year, we would usually expect to have about 2 million visitors through our gates. But obviously, due to COVID restrictions, we have been closed for a majority of the year. Outside of the zoo, we are also involved in a lot of conservation programs. So 66 are ongoing. So even with all the restrictions and limited funds we've kept those going even throughout the pandemic. And these take part in about 21 different countries around the world. So Chester Zoo Youth Board. So we were recruited last March. So we have been together now for, actually it was January, I misspoke, but we had our first meeting in March last year. So we have been together now as a youth board for over a year. Doesn't feel that long. So Chester Zoo decided that the demographic they weren't reaching as much in the zoo and outside was the 12 to 25-year demographic. So they thought the best way to reach and sort of improve this was to have a youth board within the zoo to improve prospects for young people. So they decided to recruit a youth board. So the recruitment process for that was we had a 90-second video application answering a few questions about why we wanted to be on the youth board and what we could bring to Chester Zoo. We then had a selection day where we sat down with directors and trustees at the zoo, and there, as well as complete some team activities and presentations. And then we also had, as I said, more interviews with the directors and trustees, who then finalized and shortlisted 13 of us. So this is the Chester Zoo Youth Board. So we're made up of 13 individuals aged 18 to 25. We all have very different backgrounds. So it ranges from students at university to people who are in full-time work in business to a tattoo artist. We've got people who are vet students, civil engineers, science communicators. So we've got quite a wide range of experiences within the board. And so our mission statement, it builds off Chester Zoo's mission of preventing extinction, but we added on to this so that it had more of a youth-focused point. So as it's on your screen now, it's providing a voice for young people. We wanted more of a universal experience at Chester Zoo, and that puts communities and young people right at the heart of it. And then we also really wanted to work hard at making sure that the next generation are represented and engaged with the work of the zoo and empowered so that they feel like they can have an impact on future conservation towards our goal of preventing extinction. So the governance structure of Chester Zoo. So as I mentioned, we are a registered charity. So we are governed by a board of trustees, the North of England Zoological Society. And so they will get recommendations and feedback from the board of directors, and then they will make points and changes to the zoo from this. And so they are made up of different committees throughout. So as you can see here, some of them include a Conservation Master Plan Committee, Ethical Review Committee, Strategic Development, and so on. And so as a youth board, we act under the trustees. So if there are any major changes or reports that we have that we want to make in the zoo, we will report to the trustees. If it's any small minor changes, then we will report to the directors. And so the structure of the youth board internally, we make up, instead of having subcommittees, we call them focus groups. And so we have 4 main focus groups at the moment. We have our communications focus group. So we're looking at designing content that is aimed more for young people, as a lot of the content in the zoo is aimed for families. We also have programs which is supporting the development for young people adapting to the zoo's current offerings. We have external reach, so that is going outside of the zoo for people who aren't fortunate enough to visit the zoo. and looking at organisations and other focus youth-led projects and groups that we can connect with. And then we also have inclusivity and diversity. And so that's to help break down barriers, make the zoo more accessible to people, and not just young people, but have inclusion within the whole Chester Zoo community. And then this will again all come together and lead towards our conservation action and developing the youth voice in the conservation sector. And the Chester Zoo Youth Board is made up of 1 chair, 2 vice chairs who support the chair, and then 10 youth board members. So meeting content within a youth board, our usual meeting structure will be, we only have 6 meetings a year, so once every 2 months usually. So in attendance will be the whole of the youth board, a Chester Zoo director liaison and trustee liaison, which basically means that a member from the board of directors and trustees who is the go-between and will communicate what we're doing, what the trustees and directors are doing, so that we're all clued up with where everyone stands. We will also have the head of conservation, education and engagement, and a senior personal assistant who will aid us in taking minutes and creating an agenda. And then within that, we will also sometimes invite presenters depending on projects that we're involved with, and we'll have youth board updates, focus group updates, and then at the end we'll have closed youth board sessions, so that if we have any concerns that we didn't feel like we could raise in the more formal youth board meeting, we can do that at the end. And so outcomes, what do we get out of these meetings? So usually we will have updates, as I mentioned, from our focus groups. And so it will just be the ongoing process of projects that we're involved in. If we're joint working with different groups within the zoo. We will also have actions from the youth board focus groups that individuals or the focus group will carry out as recommendations that are decided within the meeting. We'll have some recommendations, as I said, that will go towards the board of directors via paper or presentations, or recommendations for major changes, which will be proposed to the board of trustees, again via paper or presentations. And then at the end of this, we will usually have minutes that and updates that are provided to the board of trustees. So as a youth board, we do have a lot of support from Chester Zoo, which has been really beneficial. So we have a mentoring scheme where each member is partnered with a senior Chester Zoo staff member for regular meetings, and that helps us develop our skills, confidence, and develops us professionally for our youth board roles. We also did have induction days when we were allowed to meet in person, and so that was allowing us to go through zoo policy. We had team building sessions, and it also gave us an induction for the chair and vice chairs so that we could set our first agenda. Throughout our time at Chester Zoo, we also have some zoo-led workshops. So that might be familiarization with the organization. So letting us know what's happening across Chester Zoo, and as well as different roles and different teams within the organization and what they're up to at the moment that we might want to get involved in. We also have strategy workshops, which are facilitated by staff, which again will help us as a youth board prioritize and evaluate actions to help us make further decisions in the future. And then as I said, we also have a director and trustee liaison who are our go-betweens for the directors and trustees, keeping us in the loop with what is going on higher up in the organisation, and administrative support for our minutes and agendas and certain email responsibilities. So Chester Zoo Youth Board, what have we achieved so far? So at the start of our time here, we evaluated the zoo's current offerings, and because with that, we had an in-depth review of inclusivity and diversity within the zoo, and were able to start putting out some networks with other youth-led conservation organisations, just as we were starting to try and come to grips with who we were and what we wanted to do. With the impact of COVID, the zoo has been closed, and that has had a major financial blow. So as part of the Save Our Zoo campaign that the zoo put out last summer, the youth board got involved through running, cycling, baking, dancing, you name it. We got involved so that we could raise money for the zoo to help out. So we raised £1,900 overall. We've also had a lot of collaborations and been technical partners in projects such as Solution Search, which is run by RARE, which is a global competition where they were looking for solutions to water pollution that integrated behaviour change. And so we were involved with that to help award their first youth prize, which was $10,000. We've also been part of discussion panels, just like today. We were also part of the Chester Zoo Career in Conservation panel. And so 3 members of the youth board discussed different pathways to conservation, as we do all come from very different backgrounds. So some of the challenges that we faced as a youth board, I mean, primarily, I'm sure we're all aware, COVID has been a big one, as in-person meetings have been cancelled. We've only had one in-person meeting last year in March, and then we all went into lockdown. So we've been having virtual meetings via Teams since then. So access to the zoo site has also been limited. So it's been quite hard to connect with the projects on the ground and with the right people. We were also one of the first, so there's not many youth boards based in zoo organisations. So there were no foundations to build on, there was no toolkits or anything we were able to work off to know of a particular steps we needed to take to do that, to become established. So establishing our role and then balancing the support and needs with independence within the organisation were really important, since the zoo wanted us to come up with our own ideas, but also wanted to make sure that they were giving us everything that we needed without smothering us almost. And so managing expectations. So we were a bit unsure of the zoo's expectations, since it is such a big organisation and there are many departments. So we were, there were different expectations by different people, so it was hard to know where we stood. And so because of that, we had to really do some reflections to make sure, so that we could form our own expectations as a youth board, what we wanted to be going forward. And confidence and experience. So a lot of us, as I said, come from different backgrounds. Some are still students, some are in full-time work, and some have conservation backgrounds, some don't. And so because of that, it was very hard to know where as individuals we stood in the youth board. People lacked confidence in meetings, as a lot of us hadn't been involved in formal meetings, so that it was all very new to us. So it was a case of trial and error and communication, just to make sure that we were able to work effectively as a team. And so finding a balance, that goes on to my next point. So we have, because we're all young professionals, we're all 18 to 25, a lot of the time we're in our early careers. And so balancing the expectations and commitments of the youth board with our own professional careers has been, or education has been, a challenge. And so it's, again, we've had to really communicate and work hard as a team, just so that we know to what extent of our time we can give to the youth board to get the best out of us. And then because of that, sometimes we different members felt like we haven't done enough. Again, that was, it's all due to personal commitments. And so, oh, I think alarm's going off. And so because of that, we've had to work hard as a team just to make sure that everyone is in appropriate focus groups and that their skills are used to strengthen the work that we do as a youth board. So how did we overcome these? I've briefly mentioned them while going through them. So we've had youth board only closed sessions. So those have been really helpful for us to speak a bit more informally. We are all good friends at the end of the day. And so being able to talk openly about concerns or any thoughts we have and opinions has been really helpful in moving forward. Focus groups, again, has been, people have then had the choice in the youth board to go and be part of a focus group they feel like they will be able to contribute best to. Having good communication as well, always making sure everyone's okay and happy with the routes that we're taking and the ways in the projects and the ways that we're tackling things, has been, again, to make sure that everyone's happy and that no one's opinion is going unheard. We also had target setting workshops as over the year, because of COVID, our targets and our goals changed quite drastically. So being able to reevaluate what we wanted to do and refocus has been really beneficial in moving forward, and that we're all on the same page. And then all the support we get from the Chester Zoo staff and through our mentoring scheme on a one-on-one basis has been really great for our development and to help take some of the burden that we might have. So for each presentation, I think we're going to have a top tip. And so for the Chester Zoo Youth Board, our top tip is have initial introductions. So making sure everyone in the group has the same level of technical knowledge, such as board meetings can be very new to young people. I know for me, I had never been part of a board meeting. So things like an agenda, taking minutes, action points, these were all new terms to me. So having an introduction so that everyone is going forward knowing the same base level knowledge is really important and valuable. Being clear what is expected of the group so that people aren't feeling anxious or lacking confidence because they feel like they can't give what they need to, and then establishing early on how the group operates and who they report to, just so everyone is clear with what they're doing moving forward, and so that we can do the best work that we can. And so with that, if you want to get in touch with the Chester Zoo Youth Board, you can find more about us in the link and contact us via the email down below. I think Connor is going to put that in the chat as well. So I'll hand back over to Connor. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Hello again. Thank you so much for that, Felix. Thank you for that really wonderful presentation. It was really, really great to kind of get an idea of the Chester Zoo Youth Board and kind of everything we've done in the short time that we've been established. And I'm now going to hand over to our presentation to Zoos Victoria and their Millennial Advisory Board in Australia. Unfortunately, because of the time differences, it wasn't feasible for them to join our session live today, but they have recorded a video presentation and send that in, so I will be able to share that and we'll get that started.
Hi, my name's Jodie Odgers and I work in the philanthropy team at Zoos Victoria. Today, members of our Millennial Advisory Board will be sharing their insights into engaging young people in governance. But first, a quick intro to Zoos Victoria. Zoos Victoria is a world-leading zoo-based conservation organisation dedicated to fighting wildlife extinction. We are a not-for-profit organisation that operates under an active state government, making us a government entity. Our 3 properties, Melbourne Zoo, Werribee Open Range Zoo, and Hillsville Sanctuary, house over 5,000 animals comprising of more than 350 species. At Zoos Victoria, we believe strongly that the extinction of species should not be tolerated, not in terrestrial vertebrate species, partnering with the Victorian community to create the world's most wildlife-friendly society, providing profound zoo-based animal encounters to connect people with wildlife, and strong commercial approaches to secure financial sustainability. We work locally and globally to make wildlife conservation possible. We're involved in conservation programs in 6 countries, 8 grassroots community conservation campaigns, and more than 50 research projects. Now, our Millennial Advisory Board. So we established our Millennial Advisory Board in 2018 to provide an introductory experience to a new group of future supporters. The objectives of the Millennial Advisory Board are to engage up to 10 to 20 people from the millennial generation on a regular basis, developing that next generation of donors and conservation advocates, to form new or strengthen existing relationships with multi-generational philanthropic families and extend our circle of influence, and most importantly, to develop a mutual learning environment. The Millennial Advisory Board is facilitated by our philanthropy team and supported by many departments within Zoos Victoria.
I'm Mahalia. I've been on the Millennial Advisory Board since they began in 2018.
And can you tell me a little bit about the Millennial Advisory Board members?
Over the 3 years that we've been running, we've had 11 members. We range from early 20s to early 30s and all have some prior connection to the zoo with philanthropy. We're all at different stages in life. Some of us are studying bachelor's or master's, some of us are recent graduates like myself, and some have been working for a couple of years.
And how were you recruited for the board?
Recruitment for the board was done through an invitation approach, so all the members had pre-existing connections or relationships with the zoo.
And can you tell me what support and training you've received as a Millennial Advisory Board member?
Of course. At the first meeting, we received governance training with an external provider. The session covered the types of boards, what makes up a strong board, and the key duties of board members and their roles and responsibilities. We also received CUA training, Connect, Understand, Act. It's a model used to guide the work of Zoos Victoria's across all community interfaces to ensure that they effectively target attitudes, knowledge, and behaviours sensitive to conservation needs. The model draws upon the strengths of 3 disciplines, so conservation science, education, and social science. This determines how best to utilise engaging and fun campaigns to achieve community conservation outcomes.
Great. And can you tell me about the actual meetings, how often you meet and how you decide on the agenda?
We meet quarterly on weekends, as that's the most convenient for everyone due to work and study commitments. Our meetings are generally up to 4 hours, and we try to rotate the meeting at the 3 different zoo sites, so Hillsville, Werribee, and Melbourne. But due to COVID, we've switched to 1 to 2 hour meetings, and they're done now on Zoom. It would be too challenging to have longer meetings on Zoom. but we are looking forward to getting back to the zoo on site for our next meeting. In terms of setting agenda, at the first meeting of the year, the whole group brainstorms topics of interest. This helps form the agenda for the meetings throughout the year and what projects and campaigns we will be involved in. We then invite staff from the zoo who work on the related projects and campaigns to present to the group, giving us greater insight and understanding of the zoo and the work that we do in our advisory role. We've had people from the marketing department, sustainability, community conservation, wildlife conservation and science, animal welfare, and social science teams. In relation to governance of the meetings, we've had a terms of reference. We also adopt a rotating chair at each meeting, and minutes are kindly done by Jodie so that we can solely focus on our role and specific tasks. At the end of each meeting, we can reconfirm the agenda for the next meeting and focus of the meeting and which speakers need to be invited.
That's great. And how do you take action or make recommendations to the zoo?
Yeah, as we're an advisory board, we make recommendations and provide feedback, which are then passed through the organisation to the relevant teams, depending on the topic or campaign that we're focusing on.
And in between meetings, how do you facilitate and coordinate the group?
Yeah, the group is facilitated through a private and closed Facebook group. We found this to be the most suitable way of communicating, as it's timely and not everyone uses email. The Facebook group also allows us to have open discussions and vote on polls in terms of most suitable meeting dates. And we also use Google Docs to share meeting minutes and presentations. It's also where we save our project-related tasks so that we can work on them individually in between meetings.
Great. Thank you, Mahalia.
Thank you, Jodie.
And now we're going to talk about the experience of being a Millennial Advisory Board member with James. James, can you share with me a bit about your experience as a board member?
Hi, so I'm James. I've been a member of the Millennial Advisory Board for just over 2 years now. Myself and the other members have been fortunate to gain insight and understanding into the work of Zoos Victoria, particularly in regards to the conservation work and animal welfare programs. We've been able to see firsthand what goes on behind the scenes and meet the people doing this critical conservation work. The deeper understanding that's been developed through these experiences has provided members of the Millennial Advisory Board with the confidence in advocating for zoo-based conservation programs, whether that be amongst peers or the wider community.
And going on your experience so far, moving forward, how do you see yourself and the group contributing to Zoos Victoria?
Going forward, our group hopes to increase millennial engagement with Zoos Victoria, whether that be by attending the zoo, or events run by the zoo, or by becoming involved in supporting the conservation work that Zoos Victoria does. By engaging with more young people, we hope to develop a better public understanding of the work that Zoos Victoria does and hopefully inform the next generation to the importance of conservation and the role that the zoos can play. We also hope to provide people with opportunities to support Zoos Victoria and the work that the organisation does, whether that be through philanthropic donations, volunteering, or simply visiting one of the 3 zoos.
And now we're going to speak to Annabelle about some of the challenges. Annabelle, can you share with me one of the biggest challenges that the Millennial Advisory Board faced when it was first established?
Hi, I'm Annabelle. I've been involved with the Millennial Advisory Board since 2018. In terms of challenges, when the board was first initiated, one of the key concepts and objectives was to form new and strengthen existing relationships with philanthropic connections. Millennials that had an existing relationship were invited to join the board. However, this meant the board was smaller than anticipated due to the limited number of potential candidates.
And so how do you think you could overcome this challenge if you were to establish the board again?
We could open it up to a wider group of potential candidates by advertising the opportunity on a public platform. This would increase the potential to have members from a variety of backgrounds, attract a diverse skill set, experience, and encourage people that may not have relationships with the zoo.
Great. And can you tell me about some of the other challenges that the board have faced since being established and how you've overcome these?
One of the challenges that we've faced have been shy and quiet members. To overcome this, we use icebreakers in the additional meetings to help members get to know each other. We make a point in group discussions of making every voice heard, and we include a behind the scenes experience or a fun activity at each meeting, which acts as a team bonding opportunity. Another challenge can be scheduling meetings that suit the majority of the group. We overcome this by using polls on our Facebook page. This always allows us to see a range of possible dates and times, with everyone able to select those that they can commit to, and the most populated date is then scheduled for the meeting. Another challenge that we face would be getting all members of the board to complete requested tasks in time for upcoming meetings, but this is normally resolved by sometimes tasks are broken down, so board members are requested to complete individual aspects of it.
And now we will finish with the top tip. Hope, can you share with us a piece of advice that you would pass on to other organisations trying to implement young governance in their operations from your experience?
Hi, my name is Hope, and I've been involved with Zoos Victoria Millennial Advisory Board for the past 3 years. My biggest takeaway from my role on the Millennial Advisory Board is to say yes to everything. Board experience at our age is such a valuable and unique experience that isn't offered to all. Working alongside my peers and Zoos Victoria to see the inner workings of every facet of the 3 Zoos Victoria sites is an eye-opening experience and allows you to be a true advocate for the organisation and their practices. We are able to achieve a unique insight into the millennial demographic that might not have been originally achieved without the Millennial Advisory Board. Ultimately, the youth of today will be the leaders of tomorrow. So to welcome them into any organisation or not-for-profit to get their perspective and work experience will be integral to their personal development, but more importantly, to the organisation's growth.
And that was the Zoos Victoria Millennial Advisory Board. Thank you to them for sending that video. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here. But I think it's really, really interesting to see how a zoo that's really similar to Chester Zoo, in that they're a not-for-profit and that their main focus is conservation, can implement something that's fairly similar to our youth board, but quite different in a lot of ways as well. Now, I got some notes there that video wasn't playing very clearly for some people. This session is being recorded and will be available after the event, so you'll be able to catch up if you wanted to watch that video and weren't able to properly just during its playthrough then. And now I'm going to pass over to Heidi from Reserva, who are a youth-led organisation that have an international youth council and are working in the South American rainforest to conserve a plot of land. And so I'll pass over to Heidi and let her do her presentation.
Hello, I'm just going to turn my camera off now just so the connection's better. And then I'll share. Is that shown on there? Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, hello and welcome to Reserva, the Youth Land Trust. Reserva empowers young people to make a measurable difference for threatened species and habitats through conservation, education, and storytelling. Our flagship project is in the Choco Cloud Forest in Ecuador, creating the world's first entirely youth-funded nature reserve. So far, we have 2/3 of the way with our fundraising goals. Once we're done, we intend to create a network of youth funding reserves around the world. Our site is home to some iconic species like the puma toucan and spectacled bear, also known as Paddington, and endangered species like the brown-headed spider monkey. The way we fundraise is through individual donations and fundraisers. Here are some individual donations. We've had bake sales, lemonade stands, physical challenges, and selling clothes. And then youth-led fundraisers. We've had the Concert for Conservation, Run for the Rainforest, and a Wild Trivia Night. Everything we raise is matched dollar by our partners Rainforest Trust and through matching funds through the 1 Million Letters campaign, which I'll mention later. For our goal of education, we work both locally and globally. A local example is through the biodiversity exhibit. In 2019, the expedition team went out and helped and gave the chance to students to visit this exhibit and see the wildlife that was living in their back gardens. Globally, we had the chance to let youth 26 and under to name a new species of frog found by scientists in our site in Ecuador. We received over 622 unique entries from 36 countries. Storytelling is all about amplifying the impact. The 1 Million Letters campaign asks youth worldwide to write letters to world leaders advocating for the protection of nature. It's supported by National Geographic's 30 by 30 campaign, asking world leaders to protect 30% of the planet by 2030. So now I'd like to lift the curtain and show you how we structure this work behind the scenes. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce Javier, our incredible partner at Ecominga. He really embraced everything we stood for at Reserva, and this quote from an interview with him sums up our organisational ethos. We cannot spread a message that we don't practice. We cannot spread something we don't really believe. I have a lot of trust in young generations. We cannot go to big meetings and say we don't want to involve young people if we don't give them the chance. As a registered non-profit, we are required to have a board of directors to pursue a specific mission. As we expand and make new projects, we always refer to this chart to see where our ideas fit, making sure we don't have a mission drift. The goal of empowering youth is something built into our doctrine, with bylaws stating Reserva's board must always include at least 30% to 50% youth members aged 18 to 25. The Youth Council is the body, and that's where I sit. I've been on here for 2 years next month, and we meet every month. We determine, design, and implement main projects. The way we do this is through the committees. We have 5 main committees and 1 junior committee. Each one has 1 or 2 officers which hold the group accountable. Development take on grant opportunities. Outreach take on the task of reading through the 1 million letters. Media organise the social media accounts. Conventions organise and apply for part of the conventions. They organise 2 sessions next week on the 12th and 13th as part of the IUCN. And community wellbeing have been putting together a new newsletter. And then we have the Junior Council, which are the next generation Youth Council members. And we now have mentors for them from the older Youth Council. But you don't have to be part of the Youth Council to be involved, as conservation is group work, and we'd love your help. We're now a registered organisation on Facebook and Instagram. This money is matched by Rainforest Trust and will go directly to youth-funded reserves. You can also contribute to the 1 Million Letters campaign and protect a classroom-sized area of the rainforest. And you can follow us and follow and share at Reserve Wild Tea to help us reach more youth and children who want to make a direct impact on conservation. And get to know our team through our expedition field notes on our website. And a little sneak peek, on April the 22nd, we're doing our second Run for the Rainforest, and that'll be launching from April through till May. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Heidi. Thank you for coming to talk to us about Reserva. I think it's really, really incredible what you've already done so far, considering you're still a fairly young organisation as well, and the fact that your youth board is really, really inclusive and is international as well. I think is really, really exciting and a really good model for how youth boards can be. If other organisations wanted to set them up, I think going international is a really, really good thing. So we're going to go and do a little bit of a panel discussion now. So the three speakers we had, so we had Felix and Heidi, and we're also going to bring on Izzy, who's also from the youth board and is going to stand in as we don't have a speaker from Zoos Victoria. And so if you do have any questions, please pop those questions in the chat and we'll ask those to our speakers. Bear with me just a moment. Right, so I'm going to start with the question. Why did you personally want to get involved with young governance, in particular your organisation? So if we start with, we'll go for Felix first. Why did you personally want to get involved with the youth board at Chester Zoo?
So, I mean, for me personally, it was a bit of a no-brainer. At that point in time, I was just finishing a degree in zoo management. So, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, the opportunity came up and it was just like I jumped at the chance to do that. And what actually shocked me more was no one else at my university or on my course applied. And I was like, this is literally what we're doing our degree for. And so I thought it was a really unique opportunity. You know, I could go and have a career as a conservationist in a zoo when I was ready, but something like this, you know, I was going to be too old to be part of at some point. So being part of this organization and having that backing and influence to create change within the zoo and externally for more young people, to make it more accessible and just a more inclusive experience, was something that really inspired me.
That's really, really cool. And if we ask Heidi next, why did you want to get involved in Reserva? Why was that something that you were interested in?
So I started sort of like my environmental journey as it is through sending letters to my MP. And I didn't really know how to get involved from there and what to do and how to do it. But then Reserva popped up and I just thought, oh, you know, that's a really good thing and I should probably get involved with that. And then that's helped me guide through and know that what I'm doing is making a big impact.
That's really, really interesting. Would you say Reserva has kind of changed your pathway quite dramatically then since being on it?
Probably, yeah, because I got to meet new people and have opportunities, and that, yeah.
That's really cool. And finally, we'll go to Izzy. Why did you want to get involved with your youth board?
Yeah, for me, it's a completely different background from Felix and Heidi. I didn't go to university. I've not done any conservation background or anything like that, but I was a member of Chester Zoo and have been pretty much all my life. So I've always seen the outside and how it looks, but I wanted to see how it works on the inside, not only as a business, but more importantly as a charity. So I think it's just nice to see it from the inside, what it takes to run a zoo, and all the decisions of what you see on the outside, basically.
Fantastic. That's a really interesting background as well. I think there's quite a few of our youth board members who don't necessarily have a conservation background as well. And I think it's really important to show that just because you don't have a conservation background doesn't mean that you don't have a place in conservation. There is still, your views and your input is still really valuable. And we're going to go to one that is mainly directed at the Zoo Youth Board that we got in the chat a little bit earlier. That is, are you included in strategic decision making that goes beyond those things that might be focused on young people or young focused events and campaigns, and that actually have an impact on the zoo as a wider organisation? And if that is the case, how does that happen? Whoever wants to come in on that from the youth board.
Yeah, I think certainly we do get our say in big campaigns that the zoo is running. At first, when we were still a young youth board, the zoo, when they were making big decisions, didn't really think about our input. But now, since we're sort of well established now for a year, each big event that the zoo are doing, it's let's get the youth board's impact and input to it. So we do have meetings with the zoo staff before they launch a big campaign or a big event, just to see whether there's anything we change, anything that we find would be beneficial to be added. So we are definitely listened to and included in events that aren't necessarily only focused for youth.
Yeah, just to jump in on that as well. So for instance, our diversity and inclusivity report that we did, it was quite a big point that we wanted to make, that you know, it wasn't just young people we were focusing on. We wanted to break down barriers for loads of different groups who might be able to then better interact with the zoo, whether it's on site or online through social media. So yeah, we do quite a lot of work throughout the organisation.
Fabulous. And just to kind of adapt that question a little bit for Heidi, kind of, are there any, as a reservoir is kind of youth led, are you able to have impact on all of reserves operations, or is there what's kind of the scope of your input? Are you able to have an impact on everything that reservoir does?
I'd say yeah, because everyone, because it's international, everyone sort of has their input and then has their own things that they do and things that they're good at, and then that gets passed on. And when we do campaigns, everyone can have their ideas and we all put that together towards the projects that we do.
Fantastic. And another question, just coming back to you, Heidi, just because you're unique on the panel so far in that Reservoirs Youth Council is international, so you have lots of members from different countries. Does that end up quite challenging, or I guess that brings challenges that a youth organisation that's based in one country might not have? And how does that work when you're scheduling meetings and stuff? Does it become quite tricky, or have you managed it quite well?
The hardest thing probably is the time zones, just making sure we all fit in that. But I think we've got a pretty good schedule now where we can make sure it's not too early, but it's not too late for everyone. I mean, there are odd occasions where that happens. But yeah, we get that opportunity to talk to everyone.
That's brilliant. And this is another one we had in from the chat earlier. It was specifically relating to the Zoo Youth Board, but it can be related to Reservoir as well. It was, how often do you get to interact with your zoo mentors? And did you find that frequency enough, or would you like them to be kind of more frequent? What's the kind of the balance you found that works best for you? And I guess that probably changes on an individual basis, but also, as I mentioned in the chat, with the challenge that the youth board might be going through at the time. Felix?
Yeah, so with the mentoring scheme, it's on the same schedule recommendation for our meetings, so usually once every 2 months. Obviously, it's up to the mentor and the mentee to decide what what works best for them, because all the mentors are senior leaders or senior members of staff within the zoo, so they're working full time, and so they're usually quite busy. So it's usually trying to have this juggling each other's availability. Yeah, it depends. Usually I'll try time it with my mentor before or after major meetings or events, or if there's anything that I want their advice on, I'll just send them a quick email with the information attached. So it's quite flexible. It's not like we're all following the same sort of timetable. It just is whatever works best for you, and if you feel you need more support, you can get it. If you're quite happy, it can just be a quick update.
Brilliant. Anything more to add on that, Izzy? Or
I think in terms of speaking from personal experience, my mentor has helped me with things outside of the zoo as well, such as I had a job application that I just wanted her to check over, which was in the field that my mentor works in. So she was brilliant in that respect as well, and she's always got time to talk to me. So like Felix says, it's just as and when you need it, but I think I tend to meet up with mine at least twice a month, just to give her an update on what we're doing, get an idea of what Chester Zoo is doing, and then if we do need any extra support outside of the zoo, then they're there to help as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, my mentor's been really helpful for that as well, and I think it's a really useful thing to have. In that, kind of Felix touched on it in our presentation, that sometimes it's really hard to kind of, you've come into this environment and you're not really sure what you're doing here and whether what you're doing has any value, and I think it's really it's a really good thing to have those mentors to kind of give you that reassurance. And Heidi, within Reserva, do you have any kind of mentoring scheme like that, or do you think you'd benefit from something like that? What kind of things do you have in place there?
Well, recently for the junior council, the junior committee, we've set up for the older youth council to mentor the younger ones. So it gives them a role model to look up to, and someone, if they're doing something, and then they can share, and then they feel like they're part of the organization as well, and really about like belonging there.
That's really, really cool. And I think, do you find that's really beneficial for the mentors as well as the mentees in that relationship as well, in that having that person that you can guide and knowing that you can help that person out as well?
Yeah, I think it's nice because you look on younger ones, and it's nice to see because they're doing stuff as well, and then you look back to when you were younger, and it's a nice cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll finish on one question to all of our speakers. It's more of a kind of general one. Where do you see young governance and organisations kind of implementing the ideas and the voices of young people? Where do you see that going in the future, both kind of within Chester Zoo or within Reserva, but also beyond in like the kind of the wider conservation sector? Where do you see that? What do you think the future of young governance is?
I think for me personally, I think just having more representation and more integration of youth representatives in organisations. I think we're still in very much the early stages, as we've seen with a lot of our speakers over the 2 days. There are places where we're sort of trailblazers by having these youth councils and youth boards, and you are seeing more and more pop up. And I think that's really important because, just like with how it's important to have diversity within organizations to get those different backgrounds and experiences, it's also really important to have that diversity in age demographic to a certain extent. And I think just having more of that really going further, and just so that we have a seat at the table where decisions are being made, and so where we can voice concerns and opinions will just be really beneficial, and I think that will just create waves, really.
Yeah, I completely agree with Felix on that as well. I think what I want out of it personally is an opportunity for young people, no matter what background they're from, what job they're looking to go into, what skills they're looking to gain. I want it to be an opportunity for them to be able to get involved in an organisation, see how it works, and see that they can have their voice heard and they can make an impact.
Perfect, thank you. And Heidi, how do you think youth governance within reserve, but also kind of, you know, the wider scale, how do you think is going to go forward in the future?
Well, I think reserve has really shown me that how powerful youth voices are, and how if we are heard, then we can make a really big impact. And I think in the future, in like the global context, I think that people are going to take us seriously, and it's going to we're going to have a much bigger impact, because seeing everything that everyone's doing, it's really working.
Thank you very much, and that's a really like inspirational note to end on. And so with that, I'll say thank you to all of our panel speakers. And now that we've heard from them, I kind of want to hear from all the audience. So what I'd like us to do is to pop you all in breakout rooms and kind of have a little bit of a discussion. So give me just a moment and I'll explain a little bit more about what I'd like you all to do. So in a moment, I'm going to pop you all. Oh, sorry. I'm going to pop you all into breakout rooms. And I'd like you all to just discuss some of the questions that are up on this slide here. And so this is going back to at the start of the presentation, I spoke about our kind of aims beyond the IUCN Summit. And we want to look at creating the resources to help other organisations set up things like a youth board and to kind of spread that that style of organisation across other, well, hopefully globally, and help other organisations set up youth boards. And so part of that is trying to collect some thoughts on it and kind of put together this toolkit of kind of how to do it. So if an organisation wants to set up their own youth board, they can look at these resources and say, that's how we do it. This is what we want to get out of it. And this is how we can kind of put that together. And so as part of that, I'd really like to hear what our audience today have to say and what they think to these questions. So I'm going to ask you all to head to the Padlet, which is a link. If I'm going to pop this link in the chat. And if we can all head there, that's going to be somewhere that you can just jot down any ideas that you talk about in your breakout room. There's going to be, they're all in different orders. So some look at the first question first, some look at the second question first. That's just to make sure all of the questions have got a lot of answers. So we can have a look through those when we're kind of trying to put together this toolkit and see what we need to include, but also like what people think and why people think this is beneficial. And so I'm going to pop us all into breakout rooms in a minute. You're going to have someone from the Chastity Youth Board popping into your breakout room just to make sure everything's okay. As I mentioned at the start, if there's any negative behaviour or any complaints, we will remove people from the room, but hopefully we won't have any need to do that. But if there are any issues, please drop me or one of the presenters a message and we will jump into your breakout room and try and help you out. And yeah, if you'd be able to pop any of the discussion points you make, pop them up on the Padlet, and then we'll be able to have a little time before the end of the session to look over what people think and how and kind of what the conclusions we came to. So if you just give me a little moment, I'll organize those breakout rooms.
How many will be in each breakout room, Connor?
With the numbers we've got, it's looking like about between 6 and 4, but most are around 5. And if anyone isn't comfortable putting their video or their sound on, please feel free to just chat away in those breakout rooms as well using the chat function. You don't have to use your video or your microphone if that's not something you're comfortable with. Right, I think that should all be working. So I'm going to open all rooms. I'm going to pop a timer on. I'm going to give us all 25 minutes just to have a bit of a discussion, so you can have a nice long discussion. Feel free to introduce yourselves, but try and keep those kind of brief so you get a chance to have that discussion and kind of get that feedback. That'd be absolutely excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to open those rooms. You should all get an invite about now. Hello again, everyone. I think everyone should be kind of coming back from those breakout rooms now. I'll just double check that everyone's on their way back. There you go. Looks like we've got most people back. Might be a few more coming if we Right, now I think we've got everyone back. I just wanted to kind of, we'll be wrapping the session up kind of a little bit earlier than planned, I think. But I just wanted to kind of have a little look through what everyone was saying in those Padlets, in those discussions that we've just had. So I'm going to kind of share my screen so we can all see that Padlet. I'm going to just read through some of the answers that were put up on there, because I think it's kind of really interesting to see what everyone thought and what everyone spoke about. So if we kind of start over here, start with room 3, what kind of makes successful young governance, what makes it work really, really well? And that was kind of building on each of our presenters discussed the challenges that their youth governance system has kind of experienced since they were started up. And so how do you kind of overcome that, and what do you kind of need to know before you start up about how to avoid those challenges and how to get it really good from the get-go? I think you're never going to get it perfect on the first try, of course, but so what do we think contributes to successful young governance? It's got to be unity or harmony between young people and the people in the system. I think that's a really, really good thing. That communication between the young people that you're consulting, however you're consulting them, and whoever is the one doing the consulting, whoever those young people will be reporting to. I think that's a very, very good point, that you have to have that kind of synergy and the resources in place as well, so that those recommendations that young people might make, you have to have the means to kind of implement those. And definitely officials need to be open to taking on board the views of the young people. I think if you're trying to consult young people and you're not open to change or open to criticism or anything that might come from consulting those young people, I just don't think it's going to work as well as it could. Fostering diversity is really, really valuable as well. Concrete structure. All of the boards had organizational structure with one framework that they work together on. So many different directions, so it's easy to lose focus and spiral down different pathways. I think that's really, really a very good point as well, in that in our experience on the youth board, when we came together a year ago, we set ourselves a pathway that we went down, and then when coronavirus happened and things didn't necessarily go the way we had initially planned them to, rather than kind of splinter off and go down different pathways that might not have been as productive, we got back together and reevaluated, which I think is really, really valuable as well. That support is definitely really, really important. I think in our experience from the Chastity Youth Board, we wouldn't have been as successful as we think we've been so far without a lot of support from staff at the zoo who've been really, really receptive to taking on our advice and to making us feel like part of the organisation as well. So that support is really, really important. And if you have got any ideas of kind of what that support might look like, feel free to pop those in the chat, and kind of what does it look like if you're supporting the young people you're consulting? What do you need to kind of put in place for them to maybe feel comfortable to share their advice? Because I think one thing as well is that if you're getting young people in to consult, there may be times where they don't agree with something that your organisation has already done or something that you're kind of doing. And I think it can be kind of, it's really important to support them to know that if they are, do want to say something, they're comfortable saying any of their thoughts, even if that might be, they're worried about how that might be perceived by people kind of in the organisation, I guess. All geographical areas, yeah, if you can get people from internationally, if that's relevant to your organisation, you can get people internationally, like Reserve have done. I think that's really, really valuable. because you then just do get that diversity of background, and kind of having more voices be part of the conversation, I don't think that can ever be a bad thing. If we kind of head over here, what contributes to successful youth governance? Definitely the drive and the productivity of young people. Absolutely, I think one of the reasons we're kind of running these sessions and wanting to promote young governance is that young people are really, really empowered. They are really passionate, and this is kind of a way of harnessing that power and that passion for the benefit of kind of organisations that might want to set up young governance. And I think it is really, really valuable. Let's have a look at some of these down here as well. Absolutely, really important to have structure that helps young people who are participating know when they're being asked to lead and when they're participating. So kind of there may be roles where young people can have a direct impact and a direct feedback into something that the organisation is doing. So for example, if Chastity were running a campaign, there might be an opportunity where we can help decide what campaign they're going to run. Or it could be a situation that they've already planned the campaign, but they want our input to tailor it to young people, or in some sort of direction like that. And I think that's really important to get that distinction communicated clearly, so that it comes back to kind of what Felix mentioned about young people knowing what's expected of them. And I think that makes it really, really productive. And I think this one's a really good one as well, coming from room 8, that the key point is young people are open to learn from the experience of adults as well. I think especially with young governance, we're kind of talking about how adults in organisations can learn from young voices and implementing young people in their organisations. But I think it's really, really important that it happens the other way as well. It's a two-way street. So we can learn from the adults or from people who are higher up in the organisation who have maybe been there a bit longer, have a bit more experience. And so, yeah, it's kind of a two-way flow of information, I think is really, really beneficial. And so kind of, I think that's that question covered quite well. So what are the benefits of young governance? Why, if you're an organisation out there that's thinking they want to implement young governance in your organisation, why would you? Why is that going to be a good thing for your organisation? We start with room 2, constantly evolving and keeping up with the times. That's definitely really relevant. I think young people having kind of growing up in a different age to sort of the people who may be at the helm of these organisations are maybe a bit more in tune with kind of changes. That's not necessarily true. That's a bit of a generalisation. But I think implementing young people means that you will constantly evolve and keep up with the times. It does also help to future-proof the organisation as well. I think that's a really important point. If we move on to kind of room 3, brings in the next generation of conservation professionals, has them learning how to do the job by working on the job. That's really, really good. You get that experience by kind of doing that. And it's a good opportunity for young people because you kind of can get that experience, but with a little less pressure, I guess. My dad was a mechanic, brought me in to observe. Exactly. It's kind of a very different thing watching someone do a job and actually doing it yourself, and you kind of learn in really different ways by both of those processes. Yeah, absolutely, it can really help get a bigger impact. Whatever we know now might not be as relevant as it will be in the future. Bringing in new people, it makes it more relevant, absolutely. So I think with young governance, it might be managed differently in different organisations, but with the Chastity Youth Board, we kind of have a maximum service period. The top maximum at the moment is 4 years. So that by the end of those 4 years, the current youth board will all leave and we'll get new people on. So that turnover is really, really valuable. So you'll be able to keep up with what is ever relevant at the time. And you'll be able to constantly keep hearing from new voices as well. Absolutely. When a government or an organisation kind of sets up an initiative and they need a voice to affirm it, by kind of exactly saying young people need us and setting up something from young people, they don't necessarily have that insight from young people and know that it's going to be something that is valuable to them. So with it opening up this conversation, this communication, it's definitely very valuable to kind of know that the actions an organisation is putting in place are the right ones or are going to have the effect that they want to have. I think that's really beneficial as well. Contributes to a wider perspective and provides more opportunities to find solutions. Exactly, it goes back to that kind of having more voices is going to give you different ideas and different perspectives on problems as well. So some people might propose a solution and someone else will kind of come up with an issue that might need to be considered that the other people have never even thought of. And it's just kind of that availability of ideas always increases if you include more people. Future-proofing an organisation, again, cultivating a new generation of conservation leaders. Again, I think the answers here are all kind of along the same vein, and they're all really coherent and definitely kind of line up with the idea behind this session and behind our plan and our aim to kind of help organisations implement young governance. So it seems that again everyone's on the same page, which is really valuable. More diverse perspectives as well, and opportunity to analyse and make a constructive critique of current models and knowledge. Exactly, it's always about challenging kind of what is current and what is happening at the moment, and seeing how can we make that better. How can we make this more relevant to the people we're trying to reach and the people we're maybe not reaching as well as we can be at the moment. I think those are absolutely excellent, and this kind of this is exactly what we wanted to get out of this session. We wanted this feedback of ideas and this discussion and this kind of outcome from it. So thank you everyone so much for all of your input. I'm going to stop sharing that Padlet now, and I'm just going to share the screen just before we go as well.
Connor, sorry, we just had someone in the chat just to reiterate. You can access that Padlet after the session for all the points that have been shared, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Felix. Good catch. Yeah, that Padlet on there, that is completely public access. I'll be copying all of that off into a document to kind of keep for the youth board, but that will stay out there. You can add to it after this session if you think of any more ideas. It's completely free to access, and you can kind of go back and look at that whenever you fancy. Perfect. Right. So kind of as I sign off on this session, I just wanted to say thank you everyone for coming to this session. It's been really fun to organise this with the youth board, and kind of really fun to hear different perspectives from everyone. I've popped some links up here for how you can find out more about the Chester Zoo Youth Board. That's our email to contact us. And if you're interested in feeding into kind of this toolkit we want to create to help other people implement young governance, I'm going to pop the link to a little survey that kind of means you can sign up to a mailing list, and we'll email you with more information and a link to kind of help out and be involved. I'm also going to pop our email in the chat. So if you want to email us any questions, you're more than welcome to. You can also find me on Hoover. My profile is, as is Felix's, as is Heidi's as well, is on this session. If you want to kind of email us, ask us any questions, you're more than welcome to. And I absolutely love to chat to more people. And if you think we can kind of help your organisation set up something and open that chat, we're more than happy to do that. But yeah, I think that's absolutely everything. I'm really happy with how global we went. We've had absolutely loads of people from all over around the world in this session. And I'm really happy with that. So thank you so much for coming. We do have another session on Thursday, same time, where we'll have 3 different speakers from Teach the Future in the UK, from Philippine Reef and Rainforest Conservation Foundation in the Philippines, and also from Madagascar of Vikachi in Madagascar. So please do come back for that on Thursday. And please do reserve it up on socials, and look out for Run for Rainforest 2, which is going to be coming later this month as well. Thank you ever so much for coming, everyone, and hopefully catch you soon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Youth Summit.